Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome back to another Sims 4 speedrunning video, or welcome to the channel if you are new here. So in today's video I'm going to be building in the world of Brindleton Bay, which is the world that we got from the expansion pack of Sims 4 Cats and Dogs, and I'm going to be building a Huge Hamptons inspired family mansion. So this house ends up having 6 bedrooms and 7 bathrooms, and it's built on a 64 by 64 lot. Now this week I just basically wanted to sit down and do this idea that I've had in my little notebook for months now, and that is to build something in the world of Brindleton Bay that includes horses and has horse stables, because pretty much ever since we got even just like a word that we was getting horses in The Sims 4, my mind was already thinking, alright, well, apart from the new world that we're going to be getting, where else would be a really good place to have stables? And pretty much months ago, I thought, well, why don't I build something in the world of Brindleton Bay? Build like a massive horse stables on that massive 64 by 64 lot, because I'm yet to build something there for my save file, work out perfectly. And yeah, that is pretty much what I did. I finally took the plunge and I finally sat down and built something on this lot, and I'm just so incredibly happy and also incredibly proud of the way this house came out, and I'm really excited to share it. And so yeah, I just really hope you guys like it. Even if you just like it 10% of the amount that I love it, then I'll be very happy, because this lot is just so special for me, and I'm so excited to share it, and I really hope you like it as well. But anyway, besides the point, moving on and actually getting on and talking a little bit more about the build itself. So like I already mentioned, the house ends up having 6 bedrooms and 7 bathrooms, and yeah, like I said, it's built on a 64 by 64 lot. Now the actual house itself, you can see that I've already built pretty much the whole main structure. The whole shell of the house has pretty much already come together. The house itself is a bit of a monster. Like, the house itself is quite a big one, but then we had so much empty space around the whole entire exterior, like the whole garden. And so for this house, I basically made it so if you've got a sim and they've got a certain type of hobby, there's probably something in this build for them to do with their hobby, to cater to them, because I basically tried to make it so there is something of everything in this build. There is so many different outbuildings, there is so many different skill building items, there is so many different activities, just so much stuff within this build. Because I am building on a 64 by 64 lot, I was thinking, well, you go big or go home, like, you know, it might as well. I didn't want it just to be like loads of garden space. I wanted this house to be filled with activities, both on the inside and then also on the outside. So for the actual lot itself, we have the main house, if you want to put it that way, which is this colossal building that I'm currently working on, which consists of, like I said, the 6 bedrooms. There is 6 bathrooms in the actual main house itself. I'll tell you where the other one is in a second. But then there is also 2 lounge spaces in the house. There is also a really massive kitchen. It has a walk-in pantry, which the pantry just looks so cool. I tried to make it look like there was loads of different like cereal boxes and cans of food and just random stuff that you would have in a pantry. But yeah, there is a pantry and then also a little laundry room. There is also a home office within this build itself. And then in terms of the bedrooms, I decided to decorate them to be one for a butler, or if you want to, like when your friends' mates come over or something. Then there is also a bedroom for a set of parents, a set of grandparents, a teens room, a kids room, and then also an infants room. Which actually, now coming to think about it, I think that's the max amount of Sims that you can have in one house. If you have like another set of grandparents downstairs sleeping in like the butler's bedroom or something, then yeah, this house can sleep 8 Sims. It's a big one. It is an absolute colossal house, like I said, but that is actually the main house, if you want to call it that way. And then on the outside, we have a series of different buildings, basically catering depending on what kind of activity, like what kind of gameplay you want to do. So the first thing we have is we have a little greenhouse for like gardening and stuff. I was thinking maybe your Sims are really into growing their own plants, maybe they like flower arranging or something. I want there to be somewhere where, if say it's autumn in your game or it's winter or something, and you still want to keep all of your plants but you don't want them to be on the outside, you can just move them into the little greenhouse. But then we also have a triple garage, which on the inside of the garage itself, I decided to separate into 3 separate rooms. We have one activity skill building, a bit of a bits and bobs room, if you want to put it that way, and then we also have a home gym, and then that is where the last bathroom is. I put a bathroom in the garage, which I know is a bit weird realistically, but hear me out. I'm thinking, if your Sims have been on the treadmill or they've been doing their yoga routine or something and they're all like hot and sweaty and gross, you're not going to want to get them to walk from the outside building all the way through the garden into the main house upstairs to go and have a shower. I said it's a bit gross, and so I decided to put a little bathroom in the triple garage. But then as well as that, because there is a few more different outbuildings, we have some horses stables. I'm not going to lie to you, I nearly just stumbled on myself and called it the horses house then, which in all fairness, it is a house for horses. You know, it's where they go to sleep, it's where they eat, it's where they, you know, do their business. But I nearly stumbled and called it the horses house. I remember, actually, side subject for 2 seconds, I remember when I first got my hands on the Horse Ranch expansion pack and the word stables just completely went out of my mind. And my first video that I did where I built like a massive horse ranch, I referred the whole point of that video, the stables were just known as the horse's house, which it does kind of work, but besides the point, on this house there is a horse's house or a stables, whatever you want to call it, and there is enough space to house 2 horses. Now on the inside of it ends up being absolutely massive, just like the actual house itself. And initially I came in and I placed down 4 horse beds, but I actually sized them down because I heard that apparently you could size down the horses' beds themselves and then you could fit more into a smaller space. And so that's what I initially did. But then when I came in and I started to get my sim to playtest this build to make sure it was, you know, all usable and stuff, my horse's head was through the gate, bless him, and it wasn't a good look. And so I did decide to change it. So there's only 2 horses' beds in there, but with the amount of Sims that you can sleep in this house, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. But on the inside of the stables itself, where I had so much space, I decided to make part of it into a little bit of like an animal hospital space. So if you're familiar with the Cats and Dogs expansion pack, you might be aware that your Sims can actively become a vet, and they can also own their own vets as well, which I've never really been able to successfully do. Mine always fail, but you can have a vet in the game and you can be a vet and you can have this vet skill. Now, I don't know about anyone else, but whenever I seem to play with dogs or cats, more so dogs seem to be the poorly ones in my game, but they always seem to get really poorly, and half the time I can never be bothered to get my Sims to go for a loan screen, to go and check in at the vets, and then have to sit in the waiting room forever because I feel like that waiting room time is just like 5-6 hours and it's just too long-winded for me. And so in the horses stables, I saw the space for this perfect opportunity and thought, why not make it into like a little mini animal hospital? So we have pretty much everything that your Sims would need if they wanted to have a vet, basically. There's like this operation machine, there's this little like chemistry lab thing, there is also the little table that you like examine the pets on. That is in the horses stables because there was space for it and it kind of makes sense. In my head I was thinking it would be for the horses, but horses can't interact with it, but I'm just imagining that in my head. But then also in the horses stables there ends up being a few different feeders, some little water things, and then there is also a woodworking table because I mean there was space for it, so why not? It's another like seal building item and also another like gameplay interactive things that your Sims can interact with. But outside of the actual horses stables itself, there is some horses jumps because where I'm building in the world of Brindleton Bay, I'm very much aware that there is no like horses trails, there's no like jumps or barrels to interact with if you have a horse, and so I felt like it was necessary to have them items on the lot somewhere. So if your Sims do want to be like the #1 top horse riding like sim person, then there is stuff for them to practice on. But then also as well on the outside of this lot, there is this little like tennis court, basketball court over here, which you can see that I've just started working on. Now where I wanted to build like a Hamptons inspired mansion, I just felt like it was just a bit necessary to have some sort of like tennis court, basketball court, some sort of like situation kind of thing like that somewhere on this lot, because to me I was just really inspired by the Hamptons and I really wanted to build like this really big fancy house, you know, that ones that you see on like Pinterest or something, and whenever you see them on Pinterest I just feel like they've always got tennis courts and massive swimming pools in their house. And so when it came into this build and I was trying to figure out how to fit out the space with like activity filled things and it's not just like empty space with loads of different gardening, I was thinking, oh, why don't I put down like a tennis court, basketball court kind of situation. Your Sims can't actually play tennis because unfortunately that is not something that we have in the game. I'm not writing it off though because I feel like we probably could get tennis at one point in time. There's no reason to say why we couldn't, but unfortunately it doesn't function as a tennis court. I tried to make it look like one. It does, however, function to be a basketball court because I put down a little basketball hoop, and you'll see actually I kind of like placed it down and then I come back to it. I did this thing with this build where I kind of did a little section and then moved on to another section and then did another section and then thought of an idea and then placed it down into the previous section, if that makes sense. But you'll see that I actually come in and I get this little like laundry basket and I end up filling it with loads of different basketballs to make it look like it's the basketball storage for the basketball court. But yeah, there is like a little basketball court on this lot. And then the last thing, which I don't think I've mentioned yet, is the pool house. That is the last outbuilding on this lot. There is a little house by the swimming pool because I felt like it would be rude if I was to build on a 64 by 64 lot. And for starters, I didn't even have a swimming pool, but two, it didn't have a pool house. And so yeah, there ends up being a little pool house. On the inside, I placed down a really big bar. The one that I've used is from Cats and Dogs. It's very coastal looking and I wanted to give that vibe on the outside of this house. I mean, you would have seen when I built like the main structure of this build, the whole entire wallpaper, apart from where the chimneys are, completely white paneling. It's very like Hamptonsy. I feel like that's very common in the Hamptons, but then I tried to give it some colour here and there by placing down these blue shutters. But yeah, on the inside of the pool house, we have a very like coastal looking bar. We also have some bar stools. You have like the ice cream machine in there, little mini fridge. We also have some seating. It's basically like a nice little chill out room. If your Sims want to maybe relax after a long day of work, they want to sit by the pool, have a drink or two. Yeah, just like a nice little space for that. But I think that is pretty much everything. In terms of the outbuilding, there is also like a swing set and monkey bars and loads of different planters, but in terms of like the structure pieces for the house, I'm pretty sure that is it. But anyway, moving on and actually getting on and talking about what I'm doing right now. So currently I'm just basically fencing off the little like horses area, the horses section, if you want to put it that way, of the garden. This is what I meant by when I was doing this build, I was kind of doing a little section, like getting like the main structure of it, getting like the foundations down for it, and then I'd come back to it. Because originally when I built the horses stables, I built the stables and I placed down some wooden floor onto the inside. You can kind of just about see that I placed down like a dark wooden floor. End up completely changing. I had a little bit of an idea when I was building this house to basically try and build a stables that wasn't brown, which I don't know if you've tried to do that, but it's actually quite difficult because the thing is, with the Horse Ranch expansion pack, we've got so many different wallpapers, we've got a couple of different floorings, but we also got a lot of different furniture pieces to use on the inside of a horse's stables. But they're just all very brown and dark, and I wanted to build this Hamptons like kind of like luxury mansion. I didn't want there to be like a dark, dingy, kind of gross stables in the corner, and so I end up changing it to be a completely different colour scheme. Ends up being this really beautiful like grey stone on the floor. There's white panels all on the walls. I end up using like a white fence and a white gate, and I tried to make it feel a bit coastal on the inside of the stables, if that makes any sense. Also something that I want to talk about because I'm currently just doing the landscaping. For the landscaping for this build, I tried to go all out with the hydrangeas because whenever I think of Hamptons and Hamptons houses and just kind of like the Hampton style, one of the first things that comes to the front of my mind is hydrangeas. I feel like whenever I see a picture of a house in the Hamptons, they've always got these really beautiful coloured like hydrangeas all around the building. And so for this build, I pretty much just use hydrangeas everywhere. Wouldn't even want to know how much money I've just spent on that flower in this build because, I mean, you can see that I've only done a little tip of the iceberg of the landscaping, and already there is so many different pink and yellow and blue and white hydrangea flowers just dotted about in the landscaping. I also use a lot of these medium sized, because they're not tall, but like medium sized kind of chunky trees to kind of run up both the driveway leading to the main house, but then also in the landscaping as well. You can see the trees that I'm talking about, they're already on the screen currently. I use them in combination with the hydrangeas, with loads of different bushes, and I tried to make it feel very luxurious because that is exactly what I wanted this house to feel like. I wanted this to feel like a really luxury Hampton style mansion that your Sims have probably been looking at on Pinterest or something. Like, I wanted this build just to feel so fancy, and the landscaping really helped that because without the landscaping, if you was to look at the actual house itself as a shell, where it's just completely white panelling and blue shutters, it's quite plain in terms of the colour scheme. But yeah, the flowers on this house just really like brightened it up, and to me it made it feel so Hamptonsy, if that makes any sense. But you can see that I'm currently just coming in and placing down a few different horsey items outside the little horse's house, or horse's stables, whatever you want to class it as. I do end up changing this because currently you can see that outside of the windows on the actual stables itself, I've got these red flowers. I don't really know. I mean, it doesn't look bad, but it just doesn't really go with the rest of the house, and I don't really know what I was initially thinking when I placed them down because there was no other red flowers in the landscaping, so it couldn't really tie into anything, but I do end up changing the flowers on the flower beds to be these little white flowers, and then I changed the actual window shutters themselves to be, I believe, a light grey, and then that way it just looks more like coastally, and it just fits in with this world more, I think, anyway. But anyway, as you can see, currently I'm just going around and doing some terrain paint. There is an absolute colossal driveway, as you can see, and in a second I'm going to fill it out by placing down this limo. Now, first things first, this was the perfect thing to place down in this driveway because, one, it fills up the driveway really nicely because the driveway space itself was just so big. But I felt like for this house, I couldn't have all these different outbuildings, all like the different bits and bobs all scattered about, and then have a tiny little driveway. Like, it needed to be quite a grand entrance to the house itself. But then with doing that, I just had this empty space and it just looked so weird. And then when I went through the live edit menu, I found that we have a limo in the game. I don't think I've ever used that before. And once I pulled it out, I remembered we got them in, I think it was the Sims 4 Get Famous expansion pack. But the thing is, I'm pretty sure the limo that I placed down itself is just a base game item. Either way, perfect fit for the driveway, and so I placed that down. And then in front of the triple garage, as you would have seen, I then also placed down some sort of like Land Rover GP looking thing. I feel like if you've got horses, you've got one of them anyway, so I placed that down. And then I also placed down some sort of like little horses carriage thing. We got that from the Horse Ranch expansion pack, and it's meant to be like a little transportation device. I don't know what you call it, but it's how you move your horses about. But I placed that down in front of the garage because I was thinking, or maybe sometimes this family, they go to like competitions, they go to shows in the world of Chestnut Ridge, they need to teleport the horse to get there some way, and so they probably do it in that little like horses box thing. I don't know what it's called, but yeah, the little like horsey thing, the horse's car. I'm gonna call it the horse's car, but yeah, I placed that down in front of the garage. And then over here, as you can see, I've now just started doing the little greenhouse. Now, the greenhouse itself is very much says what it does on the tin. It's a house inside. There's green. No, I'm joking. In the inside, there's loads of different plants and there's loads of different things that your Sims can interact with if they maybe perhaps like gardening. There isn't a flower arranging table on the inside of the greenhouse, but over here in this little section, you see how I've got the fence and it's kind of got like a little bit of an opening. Well, that goes into the gardening garden, which is very much a case of, you know, like the Sims 4 for Rent, the new expansion pack that got announced yesterday. Very much that kind of situation. I know it's a little bit of a mouthful, but with this garden, I kind of like separated it into different little mini subsections. And just off the greenhouse, yeah, we have this like gardening garden, we have the flower arranging table, we have some exterior planters, but then there is also some planters on the inside of the greenhouse as well. Like I said, maybe your Sims are really into gardening, they've got a proper green thumb, and winter time comes, they're a bit sad because their plants can't like flourish and they can't grow and stuff. Just move them on into the greenhouse. And so yeah, that is pretty much what the greenhouse is. Now, I will say, and I feel really bad and I hate doing this, but I did decide to cut out the footage for the greenhouse as well as some other spaces in this build, just because coming into this build, I knew this house was going to be an absolute monster. Like, I knew it was going to be a really big build, and I knew it was going to take me a really long time. I didn't anticipate how long it would take me. If you're curious, I had around about 16.5 hours worth of recorded footage for this one build, which, even when you speed it up, that is a lot of footage. That is a lot of footage to work with. And so when it came into actually figuring out what are the most key parts of this build, what is really necessary, what parts do I really desperately want to show you, I did decide to cut out the greenhouse because I've done so many greenhouses now before in the past, and I feel like greenhouses are quite repetitive because, I mean, there's only so much that you can put in them. But then saying that, actually, then this is the case for the whole entire house, because every single house has a kitchen and a dining room, and for greenhouses, it's just like a smaller room and you're quite limited on the space, and so I did decide to cut it out. I really hate cutting out any footage of any of my builds. I mean, if you know me and you've been watching me for a while, I literally like to show you the start to finish process. Like, I like to show you pretty much everything just because I'm so excited about everything that I build, and I want to be excited with you, and I want you to see every single like smaller little detail. And I hate cutting footage out because, I mean, I just don't like it. But for this build, I just had too much footage. Like, once I sped the footage up, the first like edit was like 2 hours long. It was just absolutely colossal. And I mean, I can chat, but I can't sit down and chat for 2 hours. My throat will hurt afterwards. And so I did decide to cut it out. I really hope you don't mind. But like always, there will be screenshots of absolutely everything at the end of the video. I did also decide to cut out some other rooms, ones that I feel like weren't exactly that necessary. One being the butler's bedroom, just because where I wasn't decorating it for any particular sim, it was a little bit of like a an NPC kind of sim, if you want to put it that way. I felt like it was one of the less important rooms. And then I also did decide to cut out one of the bits and bobs rooms in the garage. But hear me out, for that one, when I'm doing one of the other rooms in the garage, you can see it anyway, and the majority of that room is just like, there's a ping pong table in there, there's like a little cards table in there, there's also like decorations box and stuff, but a lot of it is just for decoration. And when I'm doing the home gym, you can see it in the corner anyway, and so I felt like that one wasn't too bad if I cut out. And then I think the last thing I cut out was the second lounge space, only because there was two and it was pretty much the exact same thing, just different sofas. I tried to make one feel a little bit more fancier than the others, but not too fancy. By the way, if you're curious, the way that I decorated the inside of this house, it's not too fancy. It's kind of like a fancy but homey Hamptons house, because coming into this build, I didn't want to build like a really fancy house that you felt like you couldn't even sit down on the sofa on. I wanted it to feel homey but just absolutely be colossal, and so that was pretty much my approach into this build. I tried to make it feel very coastal and just very nice. It's the only way I can describe it, but you'll see what I mean when we actually move on and I start furnishing the inside. But currently you can see that I've moved over to like the back right hand side of the build, and I'm currently just doing a little bit of terrain painting around the pool house. So first of all, the whole entire grass of this whole entire 64 by 64 lot, I tried to make look like had some sort of like lawnmower lines within the grass, because I'm thinking the Sims that live here, first of all, they've got a limo outside their front door, so first of all, they've got a bit of money. It's a bit of a given with this house, the lot size. By the way, I have absolutely no idea how much this house costs in the end, but at one point in time when I was building, I had a quick little look at the build details and it said something around the 400,000 simoleon mark. Not a clue, it could be $500,000. I actually ain't got a Scooby. But I'm thinking the Sims that live here, they've got so much money. They're probably going to have not only a butler, probably a maid, probably hire a chef. They probably have multiple different people come and do their gardening. They probably have like a horse ranch, tan person thing. They have help, basically. I'm thinking if you've got a gardener and you've got the amount of lawn space that this Sims family have, why not get them to do little like lines in the grass to make it feel a little bit fancy? And so basically using a mixture of two different terrain paints, that is what I did. You can see that I decided to make the actual lines themselves 2 tiles big, because I have done this before in the past, I'm pretty sure, but whenever I've done it, I've always done the lines to be one single tile, if that makes sense, because when I'm drawing the lines, I have the grid on. There is probably absolutely no way that I would be able to ever draw these lines if the grid system wasn't a thing in The Sims 4, because they would just be so like skew with and whatever. But when I'm drawing the lines itself, I have the grid turned on, and instead of doing a 1 tile little line, I did 2 tiles for this one, just because I had so much green space, and I just felt like if you zoom out and you look at the house itself, and I did like 1 tile lawn lines, it would just look like the house is a bit stripy. If that makes any sense whatsoever. And so yeah, I decided to do these quite big lawn lines in the grass, and then I basically just went over the top of it, which I know probably seems like, why did you spend so much time doing these individual lines to then repaint over it? I just wanted it to be perfect on the underneath, so then when I did this other bit of terrain paint over here, where it ends up having like the sun lounges and this little like seating area on, I knew that the lawn was going to be nice around it, if that makes any sense. But yeah, I decided to cover it up with another terrain paint, which is kind of like a stone path one. This one is from Get Together, I think. And also, if you're curious, the terrain paint that I used for the driveway, kind of like cleaning up to the house, that is from also Get Together. But over here, as you can see, I placed down a little barbecue, which I think the one that I've used is from the Perfect Patio Stuff. And then I moved objects, some like oils and spices, and also some like barbecue looking tongy thing. I'm doing our movements and you can't see me, but the little tongs that you use whenever you're grilling something, I place that down to the barbecue. There is also a really big long table, and then I also place down these little tiny planters. Well, I say tiny, they're not originally tiny, they're from the City Living expansion pack, but I sized them down really small and then like merged them 3 together onto the table to make it look like the table wasn't so empty and bare. But then also around the actual pool itself, I placed down 3 sun lounges. There is most definitely space if you want to have like 10 sun lounges if you fancy, but I only placed down 3 because I felt like 3 looked the best and it looked the most like put together, if that makes any sense. But then also I just did the pool house, but you didn't see me do that because I did forget. I did also decide to cut out the footage of the pool house. again, I'm really sorry. I just had so much footage, and like I said, the first edit, once I sped all the footage up, the sped up footage itself for this build was like around about 2 hours long. And then once I came in, I did the first edit, then I made it down to like an hour and a half, and then that's without the screenshots. I haven't even added the screenshots in yet. I don't even know how long the screenshots are going to be, but I've taken so many different screenshots of this build because there was just so many different little like nooks and crannies that I was just absolutely in love with, and I just wanted to share it, and I just wanted to show you all. And so there's going to be a lot of screenshots of everything. But you know, I did also just do the pool house. Ends up having a really big bar in, and then also, yeah, like I said, like a little mini fridge, and then also like an ice cream machine and stuff. And then quickly you would have just seen me do the home gym. In the home gym, it's a bit weird because I could have probably fit more fitness equipment in there if I wanted to, but it was quite a small-ish room. I didn't want to shrink it though, because on the other side, I don't know if you would have seen, but there was like a pool table, and I didn't want to interfere with the pool table and like the spacing around that. But the actual gym itself, I decided to opt for 2 treadmills and then also a yoga mat. There is most definitely room if you want to place down like a boxing bag in there, or one of them like multi-functioning using machine, I don't know what they're called. This is the thing, I will never learn the name of them. We've got this gym equipment thing in the game where your Sims can like work out their legs, and they can do like leg press, or they can do like some other stuff for their arms. I don't know what that's called, but you can probably place it down into there. But I just felt like if I did, it probably would have made it look a little bit too squished, if that made any sense. But either way, moving on, as you can see, I've now moved over back to the horses house or stables, whatever you want to class it as. But here you can see that I've just completely changed the colour scheme, and I've tried to opt for pretty much just all white features within the stables itself. So currently I have 4 horses beds in kind of like these little separate fenced off gated areas. Like I said, there ends up being space for 2 horses in this build because when I came in and I was playtesting, the horse can, like for reference, if you are wondering, your horses can go into size down horse beds if they're sized down once. I'm not sure if you can size them down twice. I really highly doubt it because I was experiencing some weird stuff and I've only sized it down by 1. But basically, when my sim was playtesting to see if the horse would go into the horse's bed, the horse went in, but his head was quite literally just going through the gate and then kind of going into the column and kind of going into the spandrel, and it just looked really weird. And I'm someone that I like to build for realism, and it's not very realistic, and so I did decide to delete 2 horses' beds. And the way that I've kind of got it situated right now, we've got like the main like little entrance bit into the stables itself, which is what I'm currently decorating, but then it kind of goes off into a left wing and a right wing, and each wing has 2 horse beds. I basically just make it so each wing then has 1 bed, and then I also place down some like food stations in there as well, just basically gave the horse a little bit more space. But like I said, I realised that I was building this house and kind of more Sims than we can have in one household anyway, and so I feel like you probably wouldn't have 4 houses. But I mean, if you want to size them back down, feel free to, but just for the realism purposes, yeah, I just decided to size them up and make it so there is space for 2 horses. But in here, as you can see, I went for this all white fence, all white gates, all white columns and spandrels and stuff, and I hate to say it, but unfortunately I had to delete it, which really hurt my heart because I absolutely love the way that these spandrels look like on top of these gates. But the thing is, when my sim was playtesting this build, I was standing in like this middle section, and I would click on the little like horse's bed area, if you want to put it that way, and I'd say go here. She wouldn't walk through the fence, she would walk out of the stables and then round the side and then into the horse's bed area that way. Don't know what was going on, some weird stuff was happening, and so I did decide to remove the spandrels completely and just make it so instead of the spandrels and the fences, it's just like a little archway. It looks pretty much the exact same, but it just doesn't have the spandrels and the columns, if that makes any sense. But in the actual horses stables, you would have seen we end up having like a little vet hospital thing in the back. We have like the surgery station, we also have like the examination table, also have like the little lab chemistry thing where off memory Sims can make loads of different like treats and all these different like wellness things for horses, and no, not horses, for cats and dogs. I don't think they can do horses. Well, this is the thing, I've been playing with horses myself recently in my own personal gameplay, but from what I've experienced, horses don't get poorly, like they don't get sick, which is amazing, don't get me wrong, because it's one less thing to worry about. But I don't think horses can get ill in the game. I mean, I might be wrong, you have to let me know, but I don't think they can. But I was thinking that this household, they've probably got a dog or maybe potentially a cat. I didn't decorate it for a cat really, but maybe they do have one. And yeah, it's just somewhere for if the dog gets a little bit poorly, they get a little bit sick and they need to get medicine, you can just go into the horses stables and deal with it yourself and save yourself going through a loading screen. But anyway, moving on from that, as you see, I just finished up the exterior of the house, I finished up the stables, I did some final like terrain around like the little horse jumps itself and then like some little clumps of grass. But now, as you can see, I've now moved on into the inside of the house and started off by like the grand entrance hallway. So in here, I will admit, this is probably like the fanciest part of the house. It's probably like as fancy as the house probably will get. Basically coming into the actual initial furnishing for this space, I didn't just want to place down like a little mirror and like a small little side table and then a staircase and call it a day. Like, I wanted the initial entrance of this house to be as grand as like the driveway leading up to the house. So you kind of walk in through these front doors, you've got 2 potted plants either side, like matching plants, and then you've got 2 get together wardrobes. I use them quite a bit in this build because 1, your Sims can like change their outfits and stuff in there, but 2, they're also really good like space filler, and so I place them either side, and then behind them we have these double staircase on both sides and they kind of like lead on to the upstairs. And then you would have seen I then found a chandelier. The one that I used originally is from the Modern Luxe kit, I believe is the name of it. It's the most recent kit that we got for The Sims 4, but I do actually end up changing that. You don't see me do it, but I was debating between that one and one that we got from, I think it was the Vintage Glamour Stuff pack, and so I just decided that I preferred the other one, and so I do end up changing that one. But you've got this quite grand chandelier, and then you've got this quite grand staircase going on to the upstairs. But moving on from that, as you can see, I've now moved over and I've started furnishing the kitchen. Honestly, this is probably my most favourite kitchen that I think I might have potentially ever done. Just the kitchen itself alone, I just absolutely love to pieces. But then also like the pantry that comes off the kitchen, and then also like the little utility room which then leads out to the outside. It just makes me so happy. But in here, where I was building like this Hamptons inspired house, a lot of the kitchens that you would find in Hampton houses interiors are very white. And coming into this kitchen, into this room build, I was a little bit nervous because I feel like sometimes if you have too much white in a room in the game, it can look quite blue for starters, but then also it can look quite like clinic. It looks like a hospital sometimes, I feel like. And so I needed to do something to make it seem a little bit more interesting than just the counters around the wall and then also the cabinets. And so I decided to try and create some sort of like, no, I was about to say roof. It's not really, I mean, to be fair, it's a roof to the oven, but some sort of like hood to the oven that was a little bit more like fancy, a little bit more built in. I would have loved it if we had some more like proper panelled counterpieces, because I feel like whenever you look at kitchens in the Hamptons, I'm talking about on Pinterest, if you ever look at one, they all seem to have really like panelled counters and they're all like completely marble countertops, and just, it's very beautiful. But trying to do that in The Sims is quite hard, and so I tried to build somewhat of a custom hood to, or like roof to the oven piece itself by merging in, I think, like 5 or 6 different cabinet pieces. Now, you would have seen what I did, but basically, I built 2 walls either side of the oven, and then I placed down like 2 of the cabinets as normal. The ones that I've used, by the way, for reference, are the ones that are from the Parenthood game pack. Now, I decided to go for these ones because these are like the nicest white ones that we have in game, next to the vampire game pack ones. But I feel like I've been using the vampire counters a lot recently in my build, and so I didn't want to use them ones, although they are absolutely beautiful. I felt like the Parenthood counters were really nice. But the thing that I didn't like about them is on like the cabinet pieces itself, when you go into like, you know, right, I don't know how to explain this, but you know when you've got a cabinet piece in the game and then you can make some pieces like smaller and you've got like the end pieces of them, the smaller piece of these Parenthood cabinets is just blue glass. I didn't like that because, like I was saying, I feel like sometimes in the game when you're building, if you're building something really white, it can almost look blue. I think that might also just be part of my reshade, but either way, I didn't like the pure like glass cabinet. And so basically what I decided to do is, using a mixture of like 5-6 different cabinets, I basically placed them down to the wall, and then I rotated some one way to completely cover like the blue ugly glass. And then what I did is I wanted there to have some sort of like clock in between the actual cabinets, just to make it feel a little bit more grand, make it feel a little bit more fancy. So what I decided to do is I then got the same cabinet that I had kind of like rotated backwards, so I only had the back of it, but then I rotated it so it was on its side by 90 degrees, and then I pulled it out, merged it in between the two cabinets, and I placed another one, just kind of like replicated what I did, but just like flipped it the other way around, and then I merged in like a little clock into the cabinet piece itself. I really hope that makes sense. If you've got any questions, feel free to ask me. But yeah, I just tried to make some sort of like a fancy oven hood, and to me it just made it feel just so special and so fancy, and I absolutely love it to pieces. But also in the kitchen, I decided to use the fridge, which is from the latest stuff pack, the Sims 4 Home Chef Hustle. Perfect fridge, because you don't have to size it up or like move it in some weird way so it sits nicely with the cabinets. It just slots in really nicely. But then also I decided to do kind of like a bit of a weirdly shaped breakfast bar, so you've still got some empty counters on the breakfast bar itself, but then it just feels a little bit more like homey. Instead of like a completely square block breakfast bar, I kind of did it in somewhat of like a L shape, if that makes any sense. But now over here, as you can see, I've now moved on into the pantry. So first things first, something that I want to mention, because I know that if I was watching this video myself as you, if that makes any sense, I would be wondering the same thing. If you go into half walls up, half walls down mode, the stuff isn't floating. The stuff just lands up against the wall like perfectly. It doesn't make any difference, because basically I knew that I wanted this house to have a pantry just because the size of it is absolutely colossal. A house of this size would have a pantry, but the thing is I needed to be really selective with the location of it, because I knew that with building the pantry I'd want to cluster up all these different like jars and cans and cereal boxes and like just loads of different books and just general stuff onto the shelf and cabinets itself. And the way that I like to clutter sometimes onto certain shelves, I like to freely place it, but when you go into half walls up, half walls down mode, then sometimes it can be floating. Now me personally, as someone that plays the game myself, I know it's annoying, and so when I was doing the pantry, I made sure that I placed it in an area where no matter what time of day, no matter where your Sims are, the walls will always be up, because it's basically going out onto the exterior walls. Hopefully that makes sense, but if you're wondering, you can still see it if you're just playing in half walls up, half walls down mode. Whenever I build, I feel like I never mentioned this, but whenever I build, I'm very much aware of that, because I not only do these builds, one for you, but I also like to play them myself, and that really irritates me when you're playing and you've got some like floating stuff. And so whenever I build, I always try and make it so things that I place onto boards won't be like weirdly floating when you're in gameplay. But in the actual pantry, I placed down a little microwave, I placed down like a fancy espresso making coffee station. I did also place down one of the standalone mixers, but I think I placed that down into the actual kitchen itself, because that is one of the new gameplay items that we got from the latest stuff pack, so that is in there. But yeah, it's basically like a little pantry which looks a lot like decoration, and don't get me wrong, there is a lot of decoration in the pantry itself, but I also wanted it to have some sort of purpose, some sort of like function. And so yeah, I placed down the little like fancy coffee making sheet, and then also the microwave. But then also just off the kitchen next to the pantry there is also a little like laundry room, utility room space. In there I placed down a washing machine, a tumble dryer, a little shelving unit. I made it look like there was some sort of like cleaning equipment. I placed down like little spray bottles and just loads of different like clotesy bits and bobs, if you get what I mean. But then over here, as you can see, I've now moved on into the next room, which is the lounge room. So in here, I am just so happy, again, with the way this room came together and the way it turned out. I feel like it's quite simply decorated in terms of, I feel like I didn't clutter up this room that much, but I think it's like all the different windows that pretty much wrap around the majority of this room. And then I use these curtains, which are from, I think, the Modern Luxe kit. I use these pretty much in every single room, by the way, in the build, apart from a few of the different bedrooms like here and there. But for the most part, you're going to be seeing these curtains a lot, because I use them to just to death basically in this build. But I use these curtains and it just made it feel just so luxury and just so Hamptonsy and just so expensive, but still also feels kind of cozy. Because in this lounge room, when I was decorating it, I didn't want it to feel so fancy that like you didn't want to sit down on the sofa and like you didn't want to mess up the pillows. I wanted it to look like a really cozy little lounge room, but it just happens to be decorated quite nicely, if that makes any sense. For the sofas in this room, I decided to go for these ones that are from the Growing Together expansion pack. They're kind of like this white Chesterfield one, and they've got this really nice like throw or like blanket over the top of it. But then I also decided to merge in some pillows again from the Modern Luxe kit. I use that kit quite a lot within this build, I noticed, but it kind of had some sort of like similar styles to what I wanted to decorate the interior of this house for. But yeah, I merged in some of these pillows that we got from the Modern Luxe kit. Even though the actual cushion, no, not the cushion, even though the actual sofa itself has pillows already on it, I was just thinking, well, you've got two of the exact same sofa. I don't want it to look like the pillows are the exact same. And so by merging in these pillows that we got from the Modern Luxe kit, I tried to put them in like slightly different placements. So it still looks like it's the same pillows, but it just looks like maybe one area's been sat on and one area hasn't, if that makes any sense. But anyway, as well in that room, I also ended up placing down some bookcases and then also a little doll's house in the corner because I thought, it's cute, why not? The kids can come down here and they can play in the lounge room whilst their parents watch the telly or something. But anyway, moving on, as you can see, I've now moved over and I've started furnishing the next room, which is the dining room. So I feel like if you're someone that lives in the Hamptons, by the way, I feel like I need to give this disclaimer because I've been talking about how building this house to be like Hamptons inspired. I have never been to the Hamptons. I will probably never go, it's a dream to, but I probably will never go to the Hamptons. This is purely something that I see in a lot of different TV shows, in a lot of films, and also just generally on Pinterest a lot. I see a lot of different like Hamptons inspired interiors and exteriors, but I feel like on the interiors of these Hampton style houses, there's a lot of built-in furniture. And so in this house, I tried to do exactly that. I use these two cabinets in the dining room. These ones are from the Jungle Adventure game pack, but I wanted to use two of them together and kind of cluster them up and try and make them look like they've got loads of different like knickknacks and loads of different like bits and bobs and just random stuff basically that this family has accumulated over time. But the thing is, about this shelving unit, it's got some sort of like glass cabinets on the top portion, but it's got the exact same bowls and the exact same stuff in it. So if you have two like next to each other, it looks like you've just copied them over, which, let's be real, you have just copied them over, but I didn't want it to look like that. So what I did is I basically decided to size up the cabinets ever so slightly. I sized them up by, I think 1.1 for reference if you're familiar with the tool mod, but I sized them up and then I basically went in and individually placed loads of different books in all these different like colour combinations in between the glass cabinets itself to completely disguise the look of all the different bowls and all the different like china basically in the actual cabinets. So then that way it looks like it wasn't the same object, just duplicated over, if that makes any sense. But yeah, I'm absolutely just in love with this dining room. Normally, dining rooms are not really that interesting to furnish, but when I really got on board with this whole like built-in furniture kind of thing, I was having a lot of fun. But in here, as you can see, we've got this really big 3-tile table. The one that I've used is from the Sims 4 base game. Now, I know the woods on the table and then the chairs don't match, but I actually kind of like it. I feel like it's a bit different, and I feel like whenever I use these particular chairs, which by the way, for reference, the chairs are from the Cats and Dogs expansion pack, but I feel like whenever I use them, I always use them in combination with this one particular table, which is from the Sims 4 base game. And the thing is, I often use these chairs. They're like some of my favourite chairs in the whole entire game. I just think they're so pretty. They come in so many beautiful swatches, but yeah, I just feel like I use them all the time with this one particular table, and so I thought, well, I always look at this one particular base game table, the one that I have used all the time in the catalogue. I need to try and match it to something, and so I thought I'm just going to try and match the woods, and I mean, I think it works. I think it looks really nice. But yeah, in there as well, there ends up being like a little armchair in the corner, and then it also placed down a side table with like a load of different like clutter and loads of different decorations. But that was the dining room. Now you can see that I've now moved on into the next room, which is the home office. Now, I'm not too sure what this Sims family do. I'm open to suggestions. If you've got any ideas what this Sims family should do in my save file, please let me know, because I, to be honest, didn't have a clue coming into this build. When I was doing it, when I was decorating, nothing really stood out to me in my mind. The only really one idea that really kind of like stuck out to me was this Sims family. They're from old money. Like they're not newly rich. They've been rich. Like they are rich, but they are proper rich. Like they come from a serious amount of money. They've got a serious amount of wealth. I have no clue how they got it though. And so if you've got any suggestions, please feel free to let me know. One idea that I literally just had about a second ago is maybe if we ever did get tennis in The Sims 4, which, like I said, I'm not writing it off. I really hope that one day we could get some more sporting activities in the game. Like, I know we've already got football or soccer, whatever you want to class it as, but to me, I really want a football goal. Like, I really want to place down like a football goal into my Sims back gardens. Like, imagine like a nice little suburban house, and you've got like a little tiny football like net in your back garden. I feel like that is so typical, especially in England. A lot of people, I mean, I don't, but a lot of people do have football like goals, like little tiny miniature ones. I just think that'd be so nice. But yeah, if we ever did get tennis, maybe the sim that lives in this house, or one of them, used to be some sort of like ex-tennis player or something, and they've now turned businessmen and they own lots of different properties and businesses. Oh, actually, that reminds me, they could actually become some sort of like landlord or something. I mean, they've definitely got a little bit of money, the size of their house and the amount of land that they've got, but maybe actually, we're getting a new expansion pack. I haven't even really spoken about it. It got announced yesterday, The Sims 4 for Rent EP, which, bit of a mouthful, let's be real. There, what, for rent? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, why couldn't it be like rent living or something? I just feel like that would have made much more sense. But either way, we're getting a new expansion pack, and I don't really know too much about it. I mean, I honestly know as much as you. We got a new EP trailer yesterday. I watched it yesterday. It was the first time I knew about it. I did see some spoilers, but I did try to avoid the spoilers just because I'm someone that I like to save the excitement for when the actual trailer drops, and so whenever I see spoilers, I'm always like closing my eyes because I don't want to see it, because I want to save it for myself. But I did see some kind of spoilers relating to this new EP, and I actually thought people were joking when they said that it's going to be called For Rent, because The Sims 4 for Rent is just such a silly... I mean, I don't even know what you would have called it. Maybe Sims 4 landlords, or I don't know, but I'm excited to hear more about this new EP. But either way, maybe there's some sort of like new career where your Sims become a landlord and they could own multiple different properties. Maybe that's what this Sims family do. Maybe they just own absolutely everything in Brindleton Bay. Maybe they own loads of different properties overseas. Maybe they own loads of different like commercial properties. Maybe got a few different like restaurants on the go or something. I actually have absolutely no clue. So if you have any suggestions, please feel free to let me know. But either way, moving on, as you can see, I finished up the home office, quickly just moved on to the upstairs and did one of the bathrooms. Now, for this house, like I said, there ends up being 7 bathrooms, which, I mean, I normally cut out bathrooms anyway because bathrooms are so repetitive, especially in the same house, because I like to decorate bathrooms to be very similar to each other, because I always think if you've got a bathroom in your house, you're going to have a somewhat similar colour scheme going in the other bathrooms, if you do have other ones anyway. And so normally I cut bathrooms out, but especially for this house, I mean, I had 7, so you only see me through the furnishing of one of the bathrooms, and that just so happens to be the grandparents' ensuite. So the actual bathroom itself ends up being probably the fanciest in the whole entire house, more so because the bath has quite literally got like a separate room attached to it. But I took this one screenshot of the bath, which I didn't realise, by the way, when I was building it. But behind the bathtub, you can just about see there's a window. If your Sims were laying in the bath, they can literally just look to their right, and they've got the whole entire sea of Brindleton Bay, and then there's like a little lighthouse in the back corner. I didn't realise this when I was decorating that room. It was more so, it was such a big bathroom, I needed to figure out how I was going to lay out all the different things I needed. Like, I wanted there to be a sink area, I wanted there to be at least one shower, a toilet, and then also a bathtub. But I didn't know how to lay out the room because it was a bit of like a higgledy-piggledy kind of abnormal shaped room. It's also located at the front of the house, and so I knew that I couldn't really change anything structurally about it. I just needed to figure out a way to make this really big bathroom feel not as big. And the thing is as well about it is the location of it itself is quite key, because at the front of the build, I don't know if you noticed, you've got all these different roof pieces kind of going into the walls, and that's how I did the roofing for this house. But whenever you add platforms and you've got some sort of like roof coming into the actual room itself, the platforms just completely just mess it all up, and then you've got the roof coming into the walls, and it goes a bit weird. And so I thought, well, it doesn't happen if you just separate the rooms. And so yeah, that is pretty much exactly what I did. I just made like a little separate room for literally just the bathtub, and then also there's like a bathrobe in there as well. And I tried to make some sort of like a nice little bath tray onto the bath itself. But either way, moving on, as you can see, I've now moved over into the next room, which is the parents' bedroom. So in here, I decided to go for the bed that we got from the Modern Luxe kit. I did say that I was going to use quite a lot of the stuff from that kit in this build, but it's just kind of like the ideal style that I wanted to go for not only this bedroom but then also the house in general. I just feel like I use so many different things from this kit, whether it be the bed, whether it be the curtains, whether it be like the little like head statue thing that we've got. But yeah, I decided to use this bed that we've got from the Modern Luxe kit. I decided to use it in this kind of like white headboard swatch with this kind of like off-whitey kind of duvet swatch. I just thought it was really pretty. But then in the actual bedroom itself, there ends up being a wardrobe which we got from the Get Together expansion pack. There also ends up being like a little makeup vanity station. The one that I've used, this one is from the Vintage Glamour Stuff pack, but we did also get one from the Modern Luxe kit. But the one that we got from the Modern Luxe kit was just a little bit too like fancy, bit too modern. I feel like the one that we got from the kit, although I love the kit as a whole, I think the kits that the Sims team do when they collab with other content creators, they're just like the best kits that we've got. But I feel like the makeup vanity that we got from that kit was just a little bit too modern, if you want to put it that way, for this particular build. And so yeah, I decided to opt for the one that we got from the Vintage Glamour Stuff pack. And then there is also a balcony off the parents' bedroom. I felt like it was nice for the parents to have like their own little like private outside space. I did decide to cut it out, but you'll see it in the screenshots. There ends up being some sun lounges out there. There is also a telescope, a chess table, and then also some more planters. Oh, and also actually I placed down like a little dining room table and chairs, and their view again just looks out onto the water in Brindleton Bay. They're placed on this particular lot, which is kind of like a higher up lot, and it's just got this whole entire view of the landscape, and it's really pretty. But yeah, that is what is on the balcony. But anyway, moving over, as you can see, I've now moved on and I've started furnishing the next bedroom, which is the infant nursery. So in here, I was a little bit stuck on how I wanted to decorate this room, and if I'm being completely honest with you, both the parents' bedroom, this bedroom, and then also the teenagers' bedroom, I decorated so many different times just because I didn't know how I wanted to decorate it. I didn't know what colour schemes that I went for. Like I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't know how to decorate it somewhat of like a coastal nursery in the game. The thing is with infants, we got the introduction with them earlier this year with the Growing Together base game patch update, because if you're not aware, whenever we get a new EP, we always seem to get some sort of like big base game update to kind of run alongside with that EP. And for the Growing Together expansion pack, we got obviously like Growing Together, it's pretty much Sims 4 Generations, but we got Infant as like a base game update. We did get a few different infant-y things from the Growing Together EP, but I feel like when it comes around to doing nurseries and like infants' rooms, I feel like at this given point in time, I just feel like I keep on doing the same thing over and over again, because we only have a select few different cribs and then also changing stations. And I really wish we could get, and I feel like this might be a little bit controversial to say, but I really feel like we would benefit from having some sort of like infant related kit, because hear me out, we've got the toddler stuff pack, we've got the kids room stuff, we've got high school years, which is pretty much a whole expansion pack focused on teenagers. It would be really nice just to get a few more like changing stations, a few more different like play mats, and maybe a few more infant related items in some sort of kit form. I mean, it doesn't have to have some gameplay attached to it, just some new just a new crib, because I feel like I use that same crib over and over and over again, but it's really the only one that I like that we've got in the game because we are so limited. I think off memory we've got 3 cribs. We've got the one that I've used, we've got like a wooden one, and then we've also got like a travel cot, which I don't think I've ever used the travel cot, and I think I've used the wooden one once. But yeah, I always kind of struggle now coming into doing like infants rooms, just because I feel like I'm always repeating myself. But either way, I do really like the way it turned out. And then now you can see that I've moved over into the next bedroom, which is the kids room. This kids bedroom is like one of my favourite kids bedrooms that I've probably ever decorated, and it's weird because coming into this room build I was a little bit stuck because it was such a weird shape, and it was really long and really narrow, and I didn't know how to decorate it. I decided to give the kid in this household the personality of someone that absolutely loves void critters, and it's actually really funny because you'll realise it. I came into this build and initially I started off by picking out which bed that I wanted to use. I knew that we had one single bed in the game that had like a void crotter swatch on it, and I was thinking that this kid loves void critters to pieces. I wanted them to have void crotters on their duvet swatch. Ended up not going for that one and just went for like this basic kind of like plain camo one. But up until the very last point in this room, I forgot to put down the void crotter station. Now, if you're not aware what void crotters are in the game, it's basically like some sort of like think of it as like Pokemon Go, kind of similar-ish, right? Basically, it's this thing that your Sims kids can play in the game, and the little station that I've just pulled out and I put onto the floor, that is the Void Crotter station where your Sims can actually play these different like trading cards, and they can like level them up and all that kind of stuff. Coming into this build, I was so focused on, I wanted the bed to be like Void Crotter related. I wanted to put posters onto the walls that related to Void Crotters. I wanted there to be like little decorations and like the little like pillowy puff things that look like they've got Void Crotters on them. And it wasn't until I went around the room and I was just about to finish it off and I thought, hang about, I haven't even placed down the Void Crotter station. That's going to be a bit difficult for a kid that absolutely loves Void Crotters, has got all this merchandise for them, but somehow doesn't have one. And so you would have seen I did initially place down a bookcase and then a mirror, and then I realised I placed down the Void Crotter station, but then I ended up deleting the mirror because I felt like with the Void Crotter station in front of it, it wouldn't be usable, and then I just made it into some sort of like little double bookcase area. But yeah, I just love the kids' room. I just think it's so cool, and I never really seem to do bedrooms for a kid that really loves Void Crotters, and so for me it was quite nice. But anyway, moving on, as you can see, I've now moved on into the last room of this house, which is the teenager's bedroom. So in here I tried to decorate this room to be for a teenager that loves cheerleading, which you can kind of see a little bit in the decorations. I placed down some trophies onto the little desk area, which I placed down two, it's the same trophy, but I tried to make it look like two different trophies for cheerleading. And then I also placed down some like pom-poms like onto some of the wall areas. Also ended up placing down one of them like little air horn things. I don't know what they're called, but you see it like cheerleaders use them. I placed that down into here. I was just thinking that the teenager that lives in this room, a very preppy, kind of feminine teenager, and so I just tried to decorate their room to be somewhat like that. I used a lot of pink and a lot of white and a lot of like French antique looking furniture. The majority of the furniture that I've used is from the high school years expansion pack, but in here there ends up being like a double bed, there ends up being like a little armchair in the corner. There is also a computer desk area. I cluttered that up with loads of different like books and trophies and like makeup stuff and just loads of different bits and bobs. And then I go around the room, finish it off by adding in some get together wardrobes, and that is pretty much it. So anyway guys, I'm going to end this voiceover right here. As always, you can download this build via the gallery. My gallery ID is JessicapieYT, or you should search for the hashtag JessicapieYT or just the hashtag Jessicapie. As always, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and as always, if you do like my content then please do subscribe, and hopefully I will see you in my next Sims 4 speedrunning video. Bye guys.